Hello friends, tonight we're going to take a look at the Maxon 808. This is really the only Tubescreamer that I've ever enjoyed. Generally I don't get along with Tubescreamers, I kind of avoided them for a long time because they just sound so fucking regular. You know, I associate them with dentist tone, like Stevie Ray Vaughan and Joe Bonamassa, the sort of tone that's often emulated by older gentlemen plugging a very expensive sewer or some sort of other a soulless guitar loaded with terrible pickups into like a Dr. Z or something, you know, with a Tubescreamer in between it, and they're running the amp real clean, and they're just getting a little bit of really dark, dead kind of distorted-y thing out of the amp. I'm not a fan of that. It's not for me. Oh, also, if you've never watched my my other channel, if that's what brought you here, you know what that is. This will not be family friendly, so please keep that in mind. If you're easily offended, this is probably not the pedal demo channel for you. And you know, I called this a review to get you to click on it, but really, there's no such thing in my mind as a pedal review. Even the worst pedal in the world has some merit. You know, there's some trick that it does in the studio that's useful. So I feel strange sort of reviewing them. This is me just walking you through what I use this for. Also, it will be front-loaded with talking and very little talking after that. We are in a studio environment today, playing through a Marshall that is extremely loud, and it's breaking up a lot as it is, and then we're running the Maxon 808 into that. I think that yields the best, most interesting results. So Maxon used to make the Tubescreamer for Ibanez. That's why I wouldn't really consider this to be a clone. On the Tubescreamer spectrum, this one has a lot more of that furry kind of high end, which I think is a lot more interesting, personally. So because this is going into a Marshall that is just staggeringly loud, there's going to be some noise. It's just there's no other way around it. It's just the way it is. But hopefully the overall sound of the whole rotten thing will kind of make up for that. So we're playing through a Les Paul first and then a Strat. Here is my unaffected Les Paul sound. Yeah, so that amp's cooking. It's there's a lot going on there already. So now let's turn on the 808, and I'm going to use my personal favorite setting starting out. All right, so now let's use it to just boost the existing sound of the amp. We're not going to really introduce much drive from the pedal, just a little bit to make sure we get some of that sort of fuzzy top end, but it's mostly just going to be the amp goosed. That is such a stupid riff. But you can hear that the sound's a lot tighter now, but we are still getting that sort of just fizzity, fuzzity high end. I love it. It just cuts right through. I really flubbed that at the end. All right, let's hear it clean up a little bit. It should clean up even better with it just pushing the amp. And this is a pedal that cleans up pretty damn well as it is. Cool. All right, let's max it out and then switch to the Strat. All right, so we've got everything maxed out except the tone, which is in that same sweet spot where we had it. So very liquidy, as you can hear. And like doing really fast runs when it's this liquidy, it just kind of runs together a little bit. That might be a little bit too much for that if you're looking for firmness, but it's an interesting and rather insane kind of sound. It would also help if I could, play it the same way twice, but that's probably not happening. So even palm muting, the low end just kind of blurs together. But still, I think it's a super interesting sound, and I really like it. All right, let's switch to a Strat. All right, so now we'll listen to the Strat's unaffected sound. This is a vintage reissue Strat, the Sherwood green one from a few years ago, also with rewind pickups. Everything is very vintagey. I chose this guitar because the Strat is the guitar most often used to abuse the poor Tubescreamer, as far as I can tell. And there are still a lot of good sounds to be had using this awesome combination here of Strat and Marshall and Tubescreamer. It does not have to suck and sound like some awful Joe Bonamassa thing. So let's take a listen and see what we get. This is the unaffected sound. So as you can hear, the amp settings are all the same, and we're going to go through the same 3 808 settings that we used before. Let's add some delay now. All right, let's use it to push the amp now. So we'll be hearing more of the amp, a lot of that sort of high-end thing going on from the pedal, but not as much overdrive from the pedal. let's max it out. All right, let's add some crazy effects. So now that we're done, I hope you understand why I like the Maxon 808 so much. It's one of my favorite overdrives and my favorite tube screamer, but really is the only tube screamer that I really like because it is kind of furry at the top. I really like that. I like what it does to the amp. I like what it does to my playing. I think that if you're going to buy a tube screamer and you're into stranger sounds, I think this is probably the one to purchase in my opinion. But earlier I talked about, dentist tone. What do I mean by that? Well, it's the TS808 thing, or OD8 or whatever the fuck. I can't even keep the tube screamer nomenclature straight in my head. It's so fucking complicated. But these guys take a clean amp, then they run the TS9 into it with the tone knob pretty low, where you're not getting a lot of good treble boosted into your signal, and then they run it at unity gain, and it's just really strange. It's really bland and just it's weird. So let's actually listen to that, so that you can see what I'm talking about. And another good rule of thumb is ask yourself, would Joe Bonamassa like this sound? And if the answer is yes, he would like this sound, then you might want to keep turning knobs until you get away from that, because it's going to just be bland and cookie cutter. That's not what we want, right? As guitar players, we're looking to sort of forge our own identity, to forge our own sounds. And if you choose something that 50,000 other folks before you have chosen, you're not doing that. You're not sounding like you're sounding like them, of course. So let's switch the amp up. We're going to drop the volume on the amp way low so that the power tubes are not breaking up nearly as much. We're still going to get some breakup because otherwise I'll have to, just reset all the preamps on my recording stuff. So we can't go quite that low, but it'll still give you an idea of what I mean. And then we're going to drop the tone knob way down on the 808 and also try to find unity gain. All right, I think I've got this dialed in. Yep, that's what I mean. All right, so you can hear that all of our sweet top end that we had before that was pushing right through, all that's gone. It's our sound's a lot darker. It still has that sort of glassiness, but that has more to do with the amp. This is a very nice amp. I love the older Marshall stuff. So we can't really thank the 808 on these settings for that. You really need to have that tone knob higher. And you can hear that now the breakup sounds fake because it is fake. We're at unity gain, and the amp was only barely breaking up. Most of the crunch that you're hearing now, what crunch there is from the pedal. And I like light overdrive. I'm not saying that we need to just play with crushing gain on all the time. You shouldn't. But at the same time, you want your breakup to sound realistic. We're all chasing that sort of power tube breakup sound, and you're not going to get that using this pedal this way. One more time. That sounds pretty bad, don't you think? I'm trying to play some of the licks from earlier so that you can kind of hear what I mean. So how could we do this better? Let's say we want this same amount of overdrive, but we don't want it to sound ridiculously fake like this. What can we do? Well, first of all, you can just get it from the amp. You can just turn the amp up louder like we had it till you hit that point. On this amp, that's at like 4 or 5. So that's one way to do it. But let's say we want that color from the 808. So we're going to turn our tone knob back to where we had it. And I'll show you some settings here that will bring you to that point. Now we're going to put the amp on 3. 3 is our overall volume. So we're getting a little bit of power tube breakup, but not much. And then we're going to use the 808 to boost it the rest of the way. So we for damn sure don't have unity gain, and we don't want that. Just use the volume knob on your fucking guitar. Just learn how that works. So we're going to push the amp with that. We're going to jack the treble back up, and we should have a much more pleasant sound with the overall same amount of gain. Now, listen to this in the room. You're going to be hearing this mic'd up and stuff, so it's going to sound different to you. If I don't get the exact level of gain, I don't want to fucking hear about it because that's really hard to do, but it's going to be pretty close. All right, I've got that set up for you. Listen to how much more real this sounds. All right, I got that set up. Hope the gain's about the same. It's probably a little bit higher because we are pushing the amp a little bit more, but that's what we want. We can always back off the volume on the guitar to match it pretty much. Thank you for joining me on this very long and crazy Maxon 808 adventure. I apologize for all of the offensive commentary, and I apologize most of all for the horrific playing. If you've been looking for an 808 that does something a little bit different and maybe sounds a little bit more alive, I think the Maxon one is something you should look at. It's still inherently a Tubescreamer, so you have to do a lot of the work yourself, but I think it's a great option. It's my personal favorite Tubescreamer, and maybe you'd like it too. Have a wonderful evening. I hope you enjoyed this, and I will talk to you soon. Good night.